Hello and welcome to our tour of ancient Egypt. So this is a 2-day assignment. You're welcome to plow right through if you would like. I'm only going to do part 1 in this video, but if you want to continue on, you can just go into tomorrow's folder and do part 2. It's all one page of notes. So if you have printed the tour of ancient Egypt fill in the blank notes, you will see that about halfway down the page where it says to Egypts, but before mythology, there's a line, and that's just to show you the day 1, day 2 break. But again, you don't have to take a break if you want to do both days now and then, not finish it tomorrow. That's totally fine. But I'm going to do part 1 today, so I will go all the way through to Egypts and then I will stop. So this presentation is a compilation of a virtual tour that I took. So there was a live tour guide in Giza. He was in his apartment in Giza, which is in exactly where we're talking about in Egypt. And he is a tour guide normally, but because of COVID, he's switched to virtual tours. So we were on a live 90-minute call and he was showing us pictures. There was about 10 other people in the tour and showing us all these images and giving us all this information. So it's a lot of his information and then some of the information that myself and Miss Swinson have gathered over the years of teaching this. So I'm super excited to do this with you because it actually just a couple of weeks ago came right from Giza, Egypt. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, where is Egypt? So you know that it's in Africa. So in your notes, that's number 1. Egypt is located on the continent of Africa. Fun fact, also considered to be part of Asia, the Middle East, and Arabia. So you'll hear people refer to it, especially people from this part of the world will say that they are Arabian or that they are Middle Eastern. Some identify as Asian and some identify as African, but it is in, if you look at this map, this piece, this chunk of Egypt is in Africa as far as geography goes. But then once you cross over right here, this chunk is in Asia. So it is in both places. And then that region of the world is called the Middle East or Arabia. Geography. So 93% is desert, which is crazy because you would think that there wouldn't be a whole lot of people that could live there if that much of the land was dry and arid. But that's really how the Nile River comes to save the day. So number 2 on your notes, the Nile River is what you want to put in the blank, is why people can live in Egypt. So Ms. Swinson talked about this a little bit when we did the buzz chart, how important that fertile soil is, that the soil right on either side of where the Nile River is so critical to the survival of the people, both in ancient times and still in modern times where all the food is grown. And then, of course, Egypt trades with other countries just like the US does. So if there's something they can't grow or produce, they trade with other countries. You have to have something to offer up in a trade in order to get something. So they're able to grow a lot of things in that area. The Nile River flows from south to north. So when you look on a map, it goes from the bottom to the top of Egypt. Fertile soil is on both the east and the west banks. So if you remember your compass rose, east and west would be left and right in this case. So just a big map of Africa so you can get your bearings a little bit better. This is where we're talking about right up top here. And this is that line where the word Cairo is. That's where I was explaining the demarcation between this part is Africa. And then as soon as you cross over right here, this part is Asia. Ancient Egypt. So this map just takes a little zoomed in approach to show you what we were just looking at. So if you look right here, this would be the line I was talking about before where you cross into Asia. But they had, in the beginning of when civilizations were starting there, you of course have people that want to be the boss of other people. This is going to be a constant theme throughout this whole class this year is folks trying to take charge of other folks. So the Old Kingdom is going to be this yellow area, and you can see that they had a pretty nice piece of real estate there all along the Nile River from the Delta all the way down. Then you have the Middle Kingdom, which is here. You can kind of tell it's a little orangey, less red, a little orange. And then the New Kingdom here and then up here as well. And this will matter a little bit later. I just kind of wanted you to know that there were people living on various parts of the river who all were competing for ownership. Writing. This is the next part of your fill in the blank notes. Ancient Egyptian writing is called hieroglyphics. So where the Sumerians, remember they're the Mesopotamians who had cuneiform as their big claim to fame for writing, and the Egyptians have what seems to be a more developed version of symbol writing, and it's called hieroglyphics. Glyph meaning like picture or image. Hieroglyphics are pictures that represent words. So in this case, again, it's not a phonetic alphabet like us where you learn like cat, C-A-T, and then you sound it out like act. That's not how hieroglyphics works. This works with whole words. So cup, looking like a little cup. Leg, actually looking like a leg. The bird symbols are a little trickier because there's in no way does that look like an A, the vulture, but the English translation is very loose just to give you something to kind of get an idea of how to write something in hieroglyphics, but it wouldn't really translate perfectly into English anyway. There are over 800 different hieroglyphs. So if you remember back to cuneiform, we were talking about 1,200 characters. Now we're down to a small 800, which is still crazy because the English alphabet, of course, only has 26 letters. So how do you say hieroglyphics? So part of what makes hieroglyphics interesting is that nobody still speaks it. So if you go to Egypt and you were to meet another, kid your age and ask them what they learn in school, they're going to be learning English and Arabic probably. They are absolutely not going to be learning hieroglyphics. This is something that is just as confusing to an Egyptian kid as it is to an American kid because nobody speaks it anymore except for historians. And speak is not even really the correct term, but rather interpret, because we don't know what it sounded like, right? Because we don't have anybody who was still around from BC times to tell us. But from what the historians can gather, these are how to say some of the words. So father, atif, mother, motif, brother, sen, sister, senet. And there's also no vowel sounds. There's consonants only. So just some interesting little linguistic things. How do you read hieroglyphics? So hieroglyphics are read depending on how the artist drew them. So the key here is to follow the direction of the bird. So in this case, the bird is facing to the right, if you can see his little beak. So we would read this going to the right. So starting over here and working our way this way is how this line would be read. And then if you look down here, it's pretty consistent because the birds are continuing to face left, which means we're going to read from right to left. Rosetta Stone. So the Rosetta Stone is how we know what hieroglyphics mean. It's this really cool thing that was discovered, literally a big black rock that was discovered in 1799. And the person that found it was actually a soldier who was just marching on a, sort of a patrol back and forth, and stumbled upon this rock sticking out of the sand. Had no idea what it was. They dug it up. They take it to a linguist or a person who can interpret language. At the time, it was a French guy named Champollion. And that's his last name. And anytime we talk about people, we always use their last name. He was obsessed. He and another guy were just spending their whole careers trying to figure out what it said. And they didn't figure it out until 1822. So from 1799 to 1822, this pretty much took up all this guy's time. And he finally figured out what it said, or he, quote, cracked the code. And the reason he was able to figure out what it said is because it had 3 languages, and he knew one of those languages. So the 3 languages that it had on your notes, you're only writing the number 3 for the answer. This is on number 7. The Rosetta Stone says the same thing in 3 different languages, but it's Greek that he knew. So down here in Greek, he knew what those letters meant. So he had to figure out what the second and the third language meant. So there is your hieroglyphics. And then this is a more common Egyptian language that was used at the time. So kind of 2 versions of Egyptian and 1 Greek. Luckily, word for word, it was the same thing. It was actually, just as a fun fact, what this actually says is at the time the king wanted there to be a rock about how great he was. So he hired somebody to carve how great he was in 3 languages, just in case anybody found it, they would know how awesome he was. So that's kind of a funny story that really helped the rest of the world figure out what all the hieroglyphics mean. To Egypt. So back to that little map I showed you where it's divided into kingdoms. So by the time we get to 5000 BC, we know that people were living there and starting to form groups and living in civilizations. By 4000 BC, so 1,000 years of development goes by, they divide into 2 kingdoms, Upper and Lower Egypt. In 3100 BC, Upper and Lower Egypt unite under one king, and his name is Narmer. Sometimes in text, you'll see him known as Mena or Mena. when it says that they united, it sounds lovely and peaceful, and like everybody was like, "Woohoo, we're gonna be a team now!" But of course, it was a battle and it was a conquering type of situation, and Narmer came out as the winner. I guess the winner is not a good choice because there was people that died, of course, but winner in terms of he is the boss of everybody else, and he's the king that's going to be over both Upper and Lower Egypts that will now be referred to as one. He had a palace in the capital of Memphis. So this is Memphis, Egypt, not Memphis, Tennessee. And he was the king of Upper and attacked Lower and married a princess from Lower. So that kind of gives you the more detail about what I was mentioning. Oftentimes, when somebody conquers somebody else, they will marry within the conquering family, which sounds weird. Like, why would you marry the person you just conquered? And more importantly, why would this girl's dad agree to that, or her family allow her to marry him? But it was sort of a way to patch up the ill will, right? So, kind of the bad blood between the two Egypts. Hey, let's patch this up. We'll kind of be like one united group. Your daughter, my family, will kind of now be merged into this new royal family, which I guess was better than being conquered and taken prisoner. Okay, so that's actually where we're going to stop for this part one. So that's all you have for today is those fill in the blank notes. And then tomorrow you will get part two, which is the second half of the notes. And then you'll have a comprehension check just to make sure this all sort of sank in your brain. All right, have a great day.